Hi everyone, Magnus here, and today we're going to be playing a subscriber of mine who's rated around 1000. We're going to play through the game, take a look at what went well, what could be done better, and hopefully you guys who are in a similar rating range, which is probably many of you, can learn a thing or two and help try to make your game a little bit stronger. But without wasting any more time, let's get straight into the game. Alright, so here is my opponent, 1060 from the US. Let's start with pawn to e4. This is the classic opening that I often like to go for. Take space in the center, follows a lot of principles. I am also going to be making a video about opening principles very soon because I think it's an extremely important topic that's often overlooked. Um, Now let's go for the bishop's opening here, bishop c4, try and go for this pawn. And now getting back to what I was saying about principles, is that I think that oftentimes newer players try and learn specific openings and often get in a situation where they're like, oh, I'm now out of what I know what to do. I'm out of like my memorized moves, and now I'm completely stuck. And I really want to get rid of that with these pre-memorized openings by just being able to fall back on your principles when you're playing. Okay, so knight f6 is a good move. It attacks the pawn in the center. We can go for the principled modern approach with pawn to d3, or the more classic approach with knight to c3 defending the pawn. This does allow knight takes in the center with, oh dear, my arrows today. This does allow knight takes in the center. However, we do have the Frankenstein Dracula counterattack against the f7 pawn. So let's play d3 now because our opponent has got a little bit more development and that gambit idea doesn't quite work out anymore. We can take a look at it afterwards. Alternatively, you can take a look at my bishop's opening video that I just made most recently. That will hopefully make a lot of this make sense. Okay, pawn to d6, a little bit passive. It restricts this dark squared bishop, which can now only go to e7. But at the same time, very solid. Maybe knight to a5 and grabbing the bishop is an idea. For that reason, I'm a little bit tempted to play a3, but at the same time, bishop to e6 could also trade off the bishop if I play a3. So I think it makes the most sense just to follow the principles of the plan, which is that you want to use this f pawn and trade it off for the e pawn at some point, or try and get the e pawn to trade for the f pawn and develop your bishop. This is a very standard idea. So let's develop the knight, add more pressure. Once again, if they take us, we're taking back. We're not forcing the issue immediately because that would invite their knight into the center, which could potentially do a lot of damage. Every single move you've got to be looking at whenever you make trades. Are you improving your opponent's position or are you improving your position? That's how you can decide whether or not you should make a trade. In chess, there's no such thing as an equal trade. There are no fair trades unless both sides receive the same exact benefit from the transformation of the position and it leads to an instant draw. That's like the only situation where I think a trade can just be completely equal. But pretty much all the time when there is a trade like knight to bishop, that's not 3 for 3. That's definitely not the same thing. All right, bishop to e6. We mentioned this move. I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's say we put this knight in the center, and they have to take with the bishop rather than their knight. So because if they take with the knight, then we immediately fork them. That looks pretty good. If we put the knight in the center and they take with the bishop, okay, let's see what happens. Takes with the pawn. And if the knight goes to b5, that now has multiple attacking pieces on this pawn. I don't really like the look of this that much. Not a huge fan. Maybe bishop to b5 to put more pressure on this e5 pawn. That looks pretty interesting. I don't see an easy way to get out of this. You have to take something like this. That develops my other bishop into the game. Let's go bishop to b5, putting more pressure on their knight here. So maybe we can get them to play bishop to d7, and then we can both dance with our bishops together forever. I'm only joking, of course. I'll just leave the bishop here and then probably castle if they were to drop back. Because once again, their queen is blocking. It's an ugly, ugly position. The bishop only had one development square, which the queen is now occupying. But you know what? So far, from my opponent, no big blunders, which is good. Good from a 1000. Keeping the position fairly solid, fairly equal. I feel like they might do something rash, like d5. They're probably getting a little bit uncomfortable with the pressure that's being applied. But we'll have to wait and see. I think probably the best move is just to take on f4 here. Because otherwise I'm going to capture. Either that or bishop d7. So you got to do one of these two moves, really. Maybe knight d7 is okay as well. But knight d7, f5, very tricky. It's hard to see these bishops getting trapped. So knight d7 is not playable, even though it looks like a decent move. This is what I thought was going to happen. Something like this. Yeah, this is getting a bit, opponent's getting a bit rash. Because now we can capture here with an attack on this pony. If they try and counterattack my pony, my attack hits their queen, so that's no good. And if we take and their pony has to move away, then we're just taking and it's a fork. So I think that's pretty much game over. There's a pin here. The center's just collapsing for black. But yeah, that's kind of what happens. Like I said, you don't have to do anything crazy to win these games. Just apply a little bit of pressure. Just apply some pressure, and eventually your opponents will start to make some mistakes. There have been like a couple of suboptimal developing moves. Nothing crazy, really. Nothing. It doesn't look like anything crazy, but now everything, all the centers falling apart. There are tactics that just go our way, and this is what I'm talking about. When you play principled chess, the tactics go your way, right? Things just seem to work out. A good chess player is always lucky, as they say. But now we have an attack on the queen. Our knight's guarding the square that the queen wants to go to fork us. That looks like a pretty good fork. I mean, the bishop's defended. We probably could have taken on c6 first. That would have been more accurate, I reckon. But what about this move? Bishop checks, f6, captures, queen e2, king f7, bishop c4. I mean, this looks pretty good as well. Just getting more pieces into the party. Capture. King goes here, then we take and make a queen. Like, yeah, there's not much to do here. Give a check. King's gonna move over. That move makes sense, but we can just continue taking and chopping, and d4's a move as well. That's pretty nasty because now we're gonna just take and then take. I guess also there's bishop d7 and queen takes e5 with this pin. Like, I think anything's pretty winning here. Okay, let's capture this one. If they take this way, I'm going to take this knight. No matter how you take this bishop, bad things are going to happen. If you take with the king, f6 hangs. Yeah. And then this way, let's take with the knight and defend the bishop. And we're going to castle long, or short maybe. Probably castle short, bring the rook into the game, and just try to keep it as simple as possible. Like, for example, okay, pretty short castles here. Or I guess they are making a threat. But if we castle long now, then we can take with the pawn, and then that our rook will defend the bishop. So this is probably the easiest approach. And then we will bring our rooks and stuff. Drop the bishop back probably, just so that it's no longer loose. Yeah, let's drop the bishop back. Let's put it on h3 because our queen might want to access this diagonal. Just try and keep it nice and solid. Then we can bring the rooks. Now, this whole skirmish might have actually been played a little bit inaccurately. I mean, probably here. From here, actually, bishop takes c6. There's queen takes, which defends the pawn. So it's probably good to take with the knight. This is pretty alright. I think this whole thing is pretty fine. d4 might have been easier just to like capture in the center or something, but doesn't really matter. Okay, bishop e6 now actually, funnily enough, looks pretty good. Just preventing the king from running away. Although we can just go for this check, and then after the king goes here, we can go for this check, and then we have this knight, and then we can start collecting some pawns. Or we can start taking the rook. Let's take the rook with check. Um, yeah, I mean, there's not much to do here. Probably we're just gonna have here, 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 and then queen h5. Makes the most sense. Threatening mate in one. If the bishop comes in, there's rook f7, and there's just way too many pieces. h6, rook f7 as well. Let's go rook f7. I don't see anything here. Yeah, I don't see any counterattack for black. There's some checks, but I'll just step over. Also, this check should probably just king b1. should be the simplest approach. I mean, you can take it and then play bishop b3, but the capture of the knight is just met by queen takes with a checkmate. Okay. Nice. And the conversion when you're up so many pieces might seem quite trivial, but I have seen games slip away when you don't play accurately. Like, for example, the way that you convert this game is by continuing to go for the attack. When you're up so much material, attacking becomes significantly easier. So you might as well keep attacking the enemy king, and then they'll just hemorrhage pieces trying to defend, right? What I see so much is that people try and go for okay, people try and go for just trading everything off, when a much easier approach to conversion is actually just continuing to play as if you're not even up material. Because if you play like you're not on material, by the way, thanks for the game to my subscriber and opponent. Before we take a look at the analysis, um, the reason I think it's important is that if you change your playstyle to become more timid, um, then then basically you can watch these games slip from material advantage to a little bit better to equal to slightly worse even, and then you're in a really tough spot mentally because you know how the game slipped away, and at that point I think you're almost guaranteed to lose. So yeah, let's take a look at the analysis. All right, so 92 accuracy doesn't really matter like the specifics of the number. I'm sure there might have been some inaccuracies in conversion, but really I think what we need to highlight in this game is actually it started with d6. Now the engine might say this is a book move, but I very much think that this is not a move you want to be playing. Your bishop is now stuck. It's passive. It can only access the e7 square, so black's just guaranteed to be worse here, right? And after f4 and queen e7 particularly, you got to castle as soon as possible. This is one of the principles. You need to play bishop e7 and castle. It might be a little bit passive, maybe it's a little bit ugly, but you've already made this concession with d6, so you kind of have to deal with it. Whereas now, your only way to develop the bishop is with g6 and bishop g7. But with f4 already having been played, this makes it a little bit risky that the f file might open up in the future. So now f3, bishop comes out. And this move here, engine even wants f5, which I think is really interesting. It goes for the exchange, and then it just claims that the center domination and the bad dark square bishop for black means that white's much better. But I think bishop to b5 made sense. It starts to really apply the pressure. And once the pressure was applied, I think the only moves here were stuff like bishop to d7 and e takes f4. Yeah, e takes f4 is the top move. And bishop to d7 close behind, it's okay. But it's really hard to make these moves, right? Because now it seems like you're helping me develop. Doesn't look like a fair trade. Why would you want to play this? But the problem is, if you put yourself in these ugly positions, you're gonna have to make ugly decisions as well, which that's an even more difficult skill. So just make things easy for yourself, guys. Just follow your principles. Get castled. And yeah, d5. D5 is just a little bit of a collapse here because the pieces is the center's just way too loose. There's too much pressure. These pieces are pinned here. And then once the center collapses, the game is effectively over. These like, finesses really aren't that important. It's just check and clean up from there, really. So yeah, uh, well played to my opponent. It is always tough playing up a significant amount of rating, but I do appreciate them playing because it's always interesting because so many people are at the 1000, sort of 1200 level and looking to improve. And I hope that what I've really been able to hammer home in this video is that you guys need to just not try and get fancy with moves like I'm fairly confident that most players around this level know that moves like d6 block in their bishop when they need to develop it. But they're still playing it, and maybe that's out of respect because they're concerned about the rating difference and just want to play solid. But you don't want to show your opponents respect. I don't need respect. I've lost like 50% of the games that I've ever played. Like I've lost probably 10,000 upwards of 10,000 games. You can definitely beat me. All right? You just have to play as if I'm not like there's no rating disparity, right? Then you'll play a much better game and you'll really see how you can improve. Also, just moves like Queen E7. These are moves that we can't really be playing, right? Because like the queen just blocks the bishop. This is like clearly an ugly move. And I think the final point, really, at this point, the position is so unpleasant that I can very much understand the blunder. But really, this is just a calculation exercise. You need to think before you play something super, super ambitious like d5. What's white gonna do? And if you put yourself in my shoes for a couple of seconds, you'll probably see that the center pretty quickly falls apart. So you really have to check for your opponent's moves. But I think that's all. That's probably going to do it for this video. I do hope that you guys found it helpful. If you did, please do consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.